Hi, everybody. I'm Wes Edwards, one of the volunteer organizers at Building Bridges for America. Some of you couldn't attend our recent Wednesday sessions on mobilizing voters who will be away from home this fall during the election season. Many voters are away from home during the election season, living, working, or serving far away from their official voting home. Building Bridges has been developing strategies and outreach efforts to reach those voters this year, and we have been holding Wednesday live sessions to help people learn the skills and help out in reaching voters who will not be at their official voting residence in election when the election takes place in November. Some will be away for short term, others for weeks or months, or they live permanently away from home, either in military service in another state or another country, or they're civilians living abroad or studying abroad. We need to reach these voters. They're eligible to vote, and when they do vote, they can turn close elections. That's what our Wednesday calls are supposed to be about. Some of you couldn't attend those calls. We'll be continuing to have them throughout the late summer and fall until the election takes place. Others of you have had trouble getting into our Zoom calls. That's because we've had some technical issues on our side that have kept people who have intended to participate from being able to get into the room at the expected time. So we apologize if you did have difficulty. We're working on the technical problems and hope to have those resolved by this coming Wednesday so that everybody who plans to attend can. So in the meantime, though, we want to put the resources that we covered at the call and in previous calls before you, and hope that you can get started working on outreach to this critical group of voters. It's a surprisingly large number of eligible American voters who simply aren't at their official voting address when the vote takes place. We'll explain some of the reasons and what you can do to help. When we do mobilize these voters, though, we can turn close elections. And let's hear from Texas State Representative Jasmine Crockett speaking to an interviewer at the Texas Democratic Party meeting last week about this very issue.
Listen, Texans abroad, thank you for everything that you do. Your voices matter back here at home where we believe in democracy. That may be up for debate by a few people, but let me tell you something. I am Texas State Representative Jasmine Crockett, and I won my House race by only 90 votes. We were actually looking at those votes that were coming in from abroad. You made it happen. So please continue to raise your voices because we need you back here at home, making sure that we ensure democracy is preserved for us all.
Thank you, Jasmine Crockett, the next Congresswoman from Texas Congressional District 30.
That's right.
Jasmine Crockett, state representative in Texas, won her race by just 90 votes and serves in this Texas state legislature and is now on her way to hopefully winning a seat in Congress this year. There are many Democratic candidates who can tell a similar story of either losing a race by a handful of votes or winning a race by a similar handful of votes and waiting late into the evening or the next few days for votes from overseas and military voters to come in to turn the race one way or another. Let's just consider in recent years how this has happened with Democrats. Mark Begich of Alaska won his race by 4,000 votes to serve in the U.S. Senate. Al Franken in Minnesota won a statewide race to serve in the Senate by just 312 votes in a state as large as Minnesota. U.S. Senator Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire won her race by about 1,000 votes in a statewide race. And just this past election cycle in 2020, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris took the state of Georgia by just about 3 votes in every 10,000 cast. Our races are so close. We have so many gerrymandered districts that are not in contention, and so many, as a result, that are breathtakingly close. And we don't want to get to the other side of 2022 and lose races because by just a handful of votes. It somehow feels better just to be wiped out completely than to come so close and lose. That's not a feeling that we want to have when we wake up the day after the November election. We want to fight for every single vote, including people who are hard to reach. And we have lost a few that way. In 2020, we lost a race statewide in North Carolina by just about 300, between 300 and 400 votes in a state as large as North Carolina. We don't want to wake up the day after this election and wonder what else we could have done. That's why we want to go now as aggressively and as assertively as we can, reaching voters wherever we find them. And the fact is, they are all over the world, from basically North Pole, Alaska, to McMurdo Bay in Antarctica and everywhere in between. There are U.S. eligible voters living or working or serving in all of every country in the world. And every state, there are voters from other states visiting temporarily and can vote by various, under the various states' absentee guidelines. The difficulty, though, is that campaigns don't reach them very easily. We don't have a lot of tools to reach voters like this, even though they are very important. The best tool we have is our networks, our personal networks, relational organizing. That's what reaches these voters. They might not get a door knock. They might not get something in the mail. They might not have an easily accessible phone number or be on social media that gets local campaign material or ads. The best way we reach these voters to mobilize them is mobilizing the people who know them to reach out to them. And that's what we want to help you do. We want to put those tools in your hands. So for the next few minutes, that's what I'm going to be talking about. So grab a cup of coffee and maybe a piece of paper and a pencil and make some notes. The next few minutes, I'll talk about relational organizing. And at the end of the call, I'll talk about our postcarding effort. Another way that we can put personal mobilization strategies to work to mobilize voters who might not vote without that effort. So when I talk about relational organizing, basically it means talking to the people that you know, people that are in your personal networks. And a lot of campaigns already stress this, and they already give people tools to do this through things like friend banking and the apps that allow you to go through your email lists and contact lists. If those are tied to voter lists, though, we might be missing some people, or we might have dated information about them, because not everybody who's away from home puts that information in a voter file or puts it in their puts a current location in their voter file. They only do that, for instance, when they request a ballot from abroad already. And many of the apps may not even have capacity to show international addresses. What we want to do, or they might put other restrictions on data. You have connections and you have secondary connections that you can tap to reach voters that campaigns that may not be exactly in the campaigns on their radar to reach. But here's how you can help now. I'm going to go to the webpage at Building Bridges. If you go to buildingbridges.com, that is our site, and everything I'm going to talk about is there. And let's just share the screen. This is buildingbridgesforamerica.com, vote from away. buildingbridgesforamerica.com/vote dash from slash away. And we are a grassroots organization, all volunteer organization, dedicated to helping progressive candidates and causes around the country and mobilizing people to participate in democracy in various ways. This is one of our efforts, reaching voters who are away from home and getting them to send their vote home in election season. The top of the page is relational organizing. The bottom of the page is our postcarding program. And I'll talk about postcards at the end of the call. There are other ways, other campaigns and efforts that you can write postcards for, by the way, if you go to the homepage for Building Bridges for America, we can write cards for specific candidates that have been endorsed, and you can see that on some of the menus up at the top. If there's a specific, if you want to write for candidates, there's certainly a lot of ways to do that. And we have a lot of great candidates that we support. And we'll talk more about postcarding in just a second. Our Wednesday sessions, as I mentioned, when technology allows, is a place for you to come and do postcards together and learn more about relational organizing. We're going to have an open session every Wednesday through Election Day so that you can participate, bring your questions, bring your insight and experience, talk about the conversations you're having with people in your personal networks about voting, because we can learn a lot from each other. We can be a resource in a community, and we can just have a lot of great ideas bouncing off of each other in a conversation in that room. Hopefully, once Zoom cooperates and we can get together. So nothing we do, we want you to feel like you are isolated in or doing on your own. We're a resource, we're help. We have, between all of us on that call in building bridges and in that room, a lot of experience canvassing and talking to voters and having conversations with people who haven't been engaged in politics much. You know, our politics has sort of devolved over the past few years, where people don't feel connected to it. And it's sometimes hard to get engaged in politics when you haven't been engaged in it in a long time, or maybe ever. Maybe you've never been engaged in politics. Building Bridges has a lot of strategies and programs that are designed to help you get connected and learn skills and strategies for engaging from exactly where you are. And that's what we have to do as progressive-minded people. Start wherever we are with the tools that we have. And one of the tools we have is our friends and family. What you'll see down here is what we call our relational organizing workbook. And you can go there and download that document, which gives in detail a detailed description of what I'm talking about more in brief today. It's a PDF file. You can download it, read it. It's online. You can read it there. You can share it, print it, use it, and hopefully it has all the step-by-step information that you'll need to have these conversations and have productive conversations and a positive experience. It feels really, really good to help somebody vote. That's just the bottom line. It feels good to engage somebody in the political process in a positive direction. It really does. It brings people in. They feel included. They feel like their voice has been heard. They've been able to speak something into the world that is good. And every voice matters. And it matters that we are asking others and inviting others to participate. And that's the core of relational organizing. We're simply inviting our friends to do something good, to use their voice, to speak from their own experience about what they want their world and their community to be. That's what voting is all about. It's an aspirational thing. It tells us the direction that we want to go as a country. And everybody needs to be in on that conversation because everybody's voice counts. Everybody's voice matters. even those who are a little bit far away from their home. So I'm going to go here to some slides to take you through the basics of what we mean by relational organizing. And as I mentioned, Building Bridges is a grassroots organization. We don't have funding, we don't have staff, we don't have paid organizers. We're just people who participate in politics from where we are. Our group grew out of the 2020 presidential campaign of Pete Buttigieg, and we share a lot of his values and vision, though we don't have any formal connection to him. We just want to identify candidates who share a lot of what he exemplified in terms of servant leadership, his principles that he called rules of the road, and we endorse candidates like that around the country, from city council all the way up to president. And Building Bridges got together in 2020 after Pete left the race to work for candidates and for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and for down ballot candidates across the country who shared positive progressive values of inclusion and just democracy that we all want to see, and the group continued to do that right up till the present day. Global Get Out the Vote is part of that effort. Our relational organizing work, we can do global training events for campaigns and progressive groups. We sponsor postcards to voters, many other things that Building Bridges does, and it's open to everybody who wants to get involved. Speaking of Joe Biden, this is an important question. In 2020, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris carried the state of Georgia by how many votes? Does anybody remember how many votes Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won by? That has been in the news a bit lately. Second question, in the 2020 election, how many Georgia voters cast UOCAVA ballots? UOCAVA is the acronym for ballots that come from overseas and military voters. UOCAVA is a federal law that gives special protections and administrative practices for how to vote in that way. So another reason that we encourage this kind of voting is that it comes with those federal protections and more secure voting rights than some states. How many cast votes that way in Georgia in 2020? 11,779 margin of victory, 18,008 Georgia voters cast UOCAVA ballots. After the multiple recounts, these were the final numbers: 11,779, 18,008. So it's safe to say that overseas and military voters can turn close races. And we do believe that UOCAVA ballots in Georgia trend heavily blue. Overseas and military voters, voters away from home, can be many different people and places doing many different things, many different reasons that somebody might be away from home during election season. That is eligible to vote in one place, voting absentee, or from wherever they happen to be outside of that area during the election. U.S. citizens can vote from anywhere, but they're not likely to unless somebody asks. And this is where relational organizing is very important. Um, as you see, there are tens of thousands of US voters around the world in various countries. 600,000, over 600,000 in Canada, over 200,000 in Mexico, 100,000 in Australia. Lots and lots of eligible US voters all over the world. The big question, though, is how many of them do you know? Who can you know? Who do you know that is outside of their district in election season, particularly abroad? It is highly possible that you know at least one and probably more. Everybody knows somebody, and everybody definitely knows somebody who votes in this category. And what we want to do is simply get you to take an inventory of everybody you know and put them on a list. Put them on a list, much like an app would do with friend banking or that kind of process. Just you can download this form on our site, sit down at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, go through your email contact lists and phone books and address books, and think about who you know who might be away from home. And who that might be is not just limited. Think about people who are seasonal workers, people who are retirees who live part of the year in one place and part of the year in another, people who work on cruise ships and fishing boats and are away from home for long periods of time, people who are on flight crews, serving in merchant marine or Coast Guard or Navy, away from port for long periods of time. Others who, I have a cousin who is a truck driver, and he doesn't know from week to week where he might be, but a good part of the time he's on the road somewhere across the country. And another, and if you ask him now, he wouldn't know exactly where that would be. He gets those assignments closer to time. Others move around for business, for all sorts of different reasons that somebody might be away from their home voting district in November. And they would belong on this list. Think about who you know, who might not be able to answer the door when a campaign volunteer knocks on it some weekend in late October or November. There's a surprisingly large number of people in this category. So download that form, make your list. I guarantee you that you're going to come up with more names than you expect. And what then? Well, then relational organizing goes to work. There are 4 things you need to do. I have a mnemonic device to remember this. I eat individual Cheerios. I eat individual Cheerios, invite, encourage, inform, confirm. Those 4 steps, those 4 simple things you do, you have an intentional conversation with voters on that list that you believe need your encouragement to vote. The workbook gives you plenty of ideas and suggestions on exactly how to have the conversations around these 4 steps. Each one of them is important. You want to invite them to vote. You want to simply open the topic of conversation. You want to encourage them, have a friendly chat, encourage them by saying you can vote. Your voting is important to do. It matters, it counts, it's not too late. Many people don't realize they can vote. Many people don't know how to vote, just in a technical or practical sense. They don't know when or where or how to do it when they're away from home. You can be the bridge to give them that information by these 4 steps: invite, encourage, inform, confirm. You yourself may not know that inform bit. Exactly how do people vote when they're away from home? Well, as I said, US citizens can vote from anywhere. The question is, how do they do it? and our workbook gives you the answers to that. I'm going to give you 3 sites that give you the answers that your friend will need under that category of inform. They don't know how to vote. They don't know where to go. They don't know how to do it. They're also subject to a lot of misinformation that they might get from people who don't know, who say, "Oh, you can't vote. You can't vote this time. It's been too long. It's too late." Blah blah blah. These are the 3 informative, authoritative places that you need to send them, that will give them exactly what they need. These 2 sites, and then the third one I'll talk about too, a little bit. fvap.gov is the official site for people to get military personnel away from absent from their home voting location. That is, if they're registered in the state of North Carolina and on active duty assigned away from their home voting precinct, anywhere in the United States or abroad, they are eligible to vote under the UOCAVA provisions. That is that federal law that I mentioned a minute ago. Those votes under UOCAVA have special timing and provisions and protections for these eligible people to vote. Not just active duty military members, but active duty military members and their families. That is, if you are a spouse or a dependent of somebody on active duty and you are away from your voting location, that is your home voting location, you can vote under fvap.gov. You go to that site, you fill out one form every year that you intend to vote under active duty. 45 days before the election, your ballot comes and you return it. Everything that the voter needs to register and vote is at that site. They're very specific help. There's specific guidance for every state. So if you, for instance, vote in North Carolina, FVAP has a page with all the information for North Carolina, the deadlines, the dates, the methods. Most people can vote electronically, and they can do it early, and it's not a very complicated process at all. It just is a matter of getting to the right place and intending to do it. FVAP is what you need for military personnel away from their home precinct. That is, if they are from Charlotte, North Carolina, they enlist and go somewhere else, either to Fort Bragg, for instance, in North Carolina. They're away from their home precinct in Charlotte. If they go to Alaska, they can do this. If they're on active duty and get stationed in Korea or Germany or Hawaii or anywhere else, they're still registered in Charlotte, North Carolina to vote, and they can vote. And they would vote under UOCAVA under fvap.gov. Link it, share it, bookmark it, go nose around that site now. It will answer every single question that you have about voting in that capacity. The second is for military personnel, anybody, whether you're military or civilian outside the United States, that is anywhere outside the territory of the United States and wish to vote, whether you're civilian or military, or for instance, foreign service or any other reason that if you're just on vacation for 2 weeks, you can, to Greece, which sounds pretty good. You can go to this site, votefromabroad.org. It's another excellent site. Every bit of information that you could possibly need, excellent help desks, helpful advice, and to actually fill in your registration and get your ballot in that site. Between those 2 sites, you're covered. For temporary, if you're just away from your voting location for a couple of days in the US, you're not going abroad and you're not in the military, the absentee provisions of your state vary by state. NCSBE.gov is, for instance, the Secretary of State's office in North Carolina. All the rules on absentee voting in North Carolina are there. Or you can also find your local election office listed there. That's how you get either the state Secretary of State's office or your local election office where you're registered is where you would get your absentee ballot if you're just simply going to be out of town for a day or two, and you're not going abroad and you're not in the military. And a lot of people are in that category, as I mentioned. For instance, my cousin, the truck driver, would probably be in this category of voting from, unless he's in Canada on a run or something. He would probably need to get an absentee ballot from his state Secretary of State's office. The rules on absentee ballot voting vary by state, so you would need to follow those carefully, and they're all outlined at your state Secretary of State's office. But again, the 4 steps: I eat individual Cheerios. You've invited somebody, you've encouraged, you've informed. The next step is probably the most important. You're having a conversation with somebody. You want to confirm that they actually got the ballot through those sites, one of those 3 sites, and they've gotten the ballot. Some people will get the ballot but never vote it. You want to have a follow-up conversation with the people on your list to make sure not only that they have requested the ballot, but they've received the ballot, they have looked at it, voted it as directed under the guidance that they get with the ballot, and they have returned it. The provisions for returning a ballot also vary by state. Some can do it electronically, some cannot. There are various methods that you can use to both request, register, and receive the ballot, as well as return the ballot. Those vary by state. They're all very thoroughly and clearly explained in the state guidelines on the FVAP and Vote from Abroad pages. So don't hesitate, if you don't know something, to go back to those pages and look. And if it's not clearly explained or there's some special issue, both of those sites have excellent help desks. There are multiple language resources. There are excellent help features to get you through the process of voting if any difficulties arise. Also, you can bring any questions to the Wednesday group, and the people in that group are also, we want to be helpful and a resource to help people vote. But you want to get to the point of confirming that the person has received the ballot, and not just received it, but returned it, and not just returned it, but gone to their Secretary of State office's website and tracked it to make sure that that ballot has been received and properly counted. That is, it has gotten to the place that it needs to go in order to count. There are some special cure provisions. That is, under the federal law that I mentioned, there are provisions for curing a ballot, or repairing what's wrong with it, or using a backup ballot if something goes wrong. I don't want to go into those. They are discussed on those sites, but you do want to make sure that you make sure that the person, your friend, your family member, has not just gotten the ballot, but gotten it in. Some people will falter right at this step. They intend, it's like anything, you've got it on your desk, but you intend to do it, but don't actually get to it. A friend's call to push them along to do it actually does help. It is, in that respect, like a door knock late in the campaign. You are the door knock with this particular group of voters. They intend to do it. They need a little urging and to get that back in. But when they do, it feels pretty good, and you have helped them get to the point of casting a ballot, and maybe for the first time from abroad. You've defeated the myths around voting from away. You can't vote from abroad. You can't vote in a midterm election. It's been too long. it's difficult. I don't know how to do it. It's complicated. It's too late. None of that is true, except maybe it's too late. Some people might wait too late. That's why you want to call them early. People can do it now. They can register their ballots right now at those two sites. They can register and request ballots through the submission of what is called the federal postcard application if you're in the military or abroad. Fill that in, and your local election office will send you your ballot at the proper time, which is about 45 days before the actual election. So you have lots of time to, lots of extra time under the federal law to get your ballot and cast it. So surprisingly, a lot of people from abroad do believe these myths, even if they've lived abroad for years. They've been talking to like a neighbor who doesn't know what they're talking about voting, or they've read something online. Those two sites that I mentioned are the authoritative places that you want them to go. You don't want them to depending on hearsay or misinformation about voting. These are the two answers. There's a federal law involved. It's not unclear. There's nothing about it that should be mysterious. And we don't want to get into a situation of sort of passive disenfranchisement where we don't support people in using these laws that are there for them to express their voting rights. UOCAVA is there to protect people and their ability to vote, and we want them to know that. So we need to break these myths. You're the best person to do it. As I said, US citizens can vote from anywhere. Oh, and even when you're in uniform, that photograph was taken in Iraq. And obviously people who vote in the military have an awful lot at stake over what happens, and they need to know that. So invite, encourage, inform, confirm. Those 4 steps, those are the best tools we have to get people to vote. Not complicated. In summary, there's one list you make based on your friends and family. Go through your notebooks, your email contacts, your college yearbooks, your yoga class, your friends who has gotten a new job in Toronto, who spends half a year in Mexico or Costa Rica, who is on a around the world vacation, who spends who works as a pilot or on a flight crew and spends weeks at a time flying planes all over the world. All sorts of different people might be away from their homes. Who's had a fire or some sort of has been displaced from their home, for instance, who has been through a personal crisis and is sort of for personal reasons not at their home address, who is on religious pilgrimage or family commitments where they are temporarily away from their location. If you're temporarily away, you can still vote by absentee or by UOCAVA. And people may not realize that unless you tell them. So one list, 2 sites, 4 steps, you have generated the votes that Representative Crockett needs to win, and a lot of candidates like her. But there's more. The more is we don't want to stop there. It's good that you've mobilized your friends, but we want you to mobilize more mobilizers. That is, we want you, once you have gotten your friend or family member to vote, we want you to encourage them to do what you have done, which is encourage their friends. They are connected to people that you are not connected to. It's very much the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of philosophy that They know people that you don't know, and it's surprising how many different combinations and connections of people that you have. You may not know any. Let's say you don't know anybody who votes in this category or votes absentee, or you don't know many. You probably do know somebody who does. Um, and it's just as important to get this tool to them, the people who are connected, as it is to reach your own friends. And it's also just as important to get your friends that you do talk to become mobilizers themselves, not just to vote under those 4 steps to get to that point of casting the ballot themselves, but to become um, energizing people in their own networks. That is, your conversation leads to a confirmed vote, but it also leads them to use their experience to talk to others. You talk to your friend Joe in Germany. Joe votes for the first time in years from Germany. That's great. Now Joe is an excellent person, an absolutely excellent and critical person, I would say, in mobilizing other people that campaigns can't reach, groups like Democrats Abroad can't reach, um, people who are other Americans, eligible voters in Germany. Joe now has the experience and the knowledge to mobilize the people around him to vote. And that's crucial. That is absolutely crucial. So urge your friends to do the same thing, especially those who have um, large networks of people that they are connected to. People vary in how many people they know. Put this in the hands of the natural connectors in your world. You may not be one, you are definitely connected to one or more of them. Get it to those people who just know everybody, and we will see what happens. What happens is we yield a lot of votes we wouldn't otherwise get. And you want these people to get a sticker. You have brought them into the field of people who have voted, and that feels really good. It's very positive. It brings them into the democratic process. It brings them into the life of democracy itself, which is very, very important, more than ever, more than ever. They can vote from wherever they are in the world, and we want them to. Here's a message we got in 2020. This does work. This is from a voter in Canada. Thanks for your hard work and the personal touch. Received a wonderful handwritten postcard. You have no idea how connected this makes us feel. 2 citizens definitely voting. Saskatoon, Canada. Pretty sure you can't do a door knock in Saskatoon. The method of getting to a voter who lives in Saskatoon is limited to a postcard or a personal outreach to somebody who knows that voter. We want to do both if possible. We want somebody who knows these 2 people there to reach out to them personally and ask. If that's not possible, we're going to send them a postcard, because not every voter, the voters in Saskatoon don't have a door in the district. They don't have, they're not going to get reached by typical get out the vote initiatives. Got to do relational organizing. Send your vote home. They need reminders, and postcards and relational organizing really are the best tools we have. Postcards and relational organizing are the best tools we have to reach these voters. That's why Building Bridges is putting so much energy and effort into both of these. We want to get the tool of relational organizing into as many hands as possible, especially now, especially in these critical districts that are going to be so close. anybody can do this, anybody can learn this, anybody can do either of these things, or both of them, write postcards and do relational organizing. And we hope that people do and take it seriously. There are a lot of voters who need a personal message. So let's go back over to, I mentioned postcarding. There are a lot of groups that do write postcards. And as I mentioned, you can do that for candidates with building bridges that are endorsed candidates. We have a lot of opportunities to do that, which you can get at our main site. If you want to do postcards to voters away from home, we are writing voters who are registered in the state of North Carolina who are away from home in this upcoming year. And if you are interested in doing that, what you would do is go to the bottom half of the buildingbridgesforamerica.com vote from away site, vote from away site, and there's a form, send your vote home. It asks for some basic information from you, who and where you are. And then you will go to the bottom of the form, ask for basic information, basic description, and then you go down to the bottom of the form and it will ask you, do you want to write voters in the US or voters internationally? We will give you either or both of those. We will write lots of cards to addresses in the United States and lots more to voters who are located outside the United States. Let's just be frank that postcard postage rates to the first category are much less than to the second, but we think they're just nonetheless still critical to reach. It is important, though, that we reach as many as we can. So please, if you want to write 10, if you want to write 20 or 50 or more, please sign up to do that. It was probably recommended that you start with a small number just to see how you do. What you do is create your own designs, and we can help you do that. Certainly come to our Wednesday gatherings and we talk about it and write some of them together. Different people have very different creative approaches to cards. You can get them, you can buy them prepackaged in various places. We have various ones that we have models and examples that you can use. Lots of different ways. And we give you the text that you use, that we want you to use. It's very important that you follow it, and very important that you hold the cards until the actual date of sending that we give you. We'll tell you when and how to send them. And it's important that you do that to get them to where they need to go in the best, at the most important and effective time to reach the people that they need to reach. We will send you that information. So once you sign up, you would give us the number that you'd want to start with, 10 or 20 or 50 or however many addresses you'd like. We will send you the packet of those names and addresses, as well as the instructions and the text and all the information and contact information you need to write the cards. You hold them till the send date. We will tell you what the send date is. And then on that date, you would have take them to your local post office and drop them in the mailbox and have a celebration about reaching voters that are very, very important to reach. Any questions would go, there's room in the form. We also ask you to abide by the rules of the road in everything at Building Bridges. Everything we do is governed by the sense of decorum and values, and these are borrowed or adapted from the Pete Buttigieg campaign in 2020. Rules of the road of respect, belonging, truth, teamwork, boldness, responsibility, substance, discipline, excellence, and joy, So everything we do and undertake is done in the spirit of those rules of the road. That means that any questions you have, you would raise with the group, and you would follow the directions carefully and represent us with respect. So please sign up, share that link with your friends, participate in our other postcarding activities too. There are plenty of opportunities. A lot of people love postcarding, and there are plenty of ways, plenty of names that we can give you to write postcards, including this one. One thing I would note for this postcarding is these are non-partisan messages. They're sent to registered Democrats, but they're not vote for a candidate or issue cards, or they are simply invitations to vote. And that's this. These cards are not making partisan or issue appeals. These are simply invitations to vote. We don't want, in this particular set of voters, to tell them who to vote for or what issue to be concerned about. We're asking them to participate. We're inviting them to participate. So an upbeat, colorful, friendly card, a personal message is really, really effective to do that. And we hope that you will do that. And in closing, I would say join on Wednesdays. With any luck, our Zoom problems will be in the past, and we will be able to join together and do this. It's much better when we do this in a group and enjoy the writing of cards and swapping Q&A over how our relational organizing is going. That's the purpose of the Wednesday gatherings, to get together and just sort of enjoy the process of writing cards and reaching people and sort of being a resource for each other. The Wednesday sessions are evolving, and once we get the Zoom challenges resolved, we will be on a good footing to meet every Wednesday and hold that space for people who are doing this work. It's really important, and everybody's invited. My contact information, it is really important, and my contact information is on that page. My email and other ways of getting in touch with me, if you have questions, please do so. If you want to set up a special event or a special training session, or have a question about postcards or about relational organizing, or you were helping somebody try to vote from abroad and ran into an obstacle, I would be more than happy to try to help you in any way that I can to get you engaged, or at least steer you in the right direction in terms of somebody who can answer that question. And typically that's somebody at the Vote From Abroad resources or elsewhere that would be able to help you, but certainly willing to help in any way possible when it comes to helping people vote. It may, in closing, sound like, oh, one person, I'm not gonna it's not worth, making a call to my cousin Joe or Mary or Louise in Japan about voting. I mean, I'm sure they're voting. Don't they already vote? Don't necessarily think that way. Don't assume that your friends are voting. Assume that they're not voting until you learn otherwise. This year, more than ever, we can't make assumptions. And if your cousin Louise in Japan or Indonesia is somebody that you can talk to and have a conversation about voting with, do it. And not just that, you don't want to just have a conversation with her. You want her to have a conversation with the people that she knows in Indonesia or Japan or wherever she's located, because she knows people that you don't know, and she can reach people that you can't. And that's really what we need to do. We can't depend on campaigns to reach everybody. We can't wait until door knocking or depend on door knocking to reach everybody, even though that's very, very important. And we can't depend on them to do it themselves, because unfortunately, a lot of people just don't know that voting is something you can do wherever you are. And it's not, and you can do it from wherever you are, and there are resources available to do it. Let's not disenfranchise ourselves, for goodness sake. After all that's going on, we have voting rights we have to assert, and we assert them by reaching the people that we know and asking them, have you voted? That's simply the strongest tool that we have. So I challenge each of you, find at least one person. I bet you can, and I know you can. And if you can't find one person, you can find one person who knows one person who votes from abroad or who will be away during election season. Put this tool in their hands and let them use it. We really have too much to lose not to do this. So please, let's do this. Let's quit accepting challenges to democracy. Let's vote for people who are worthy of public office. Let's rise up as citizens and as decent people and vote. Thanks.